Ray, thank you for joining me. I'm really excited to talk to you again. I'd like to start off by asking you about your role within Volvo. You recently had kind of a slight change in your title to include a focus on innovation. Um, what does that mean for what you are going to be focusing on in your job, and how do you hope to use it to assist in furthering technology advancements within the Volvo construction equipment organization?
So really what it is my role before my previous role to this one was sustainability and productivity services, which basically focused on the sustainable technologies coming into the market, but also what do we need to do to help customers with their overall site perspective and take a more holistic view than just making the machine better or more efficient or easier to operate or more productive. How do we make the entire site work together to be more productive, more efficient, safer, more comfortable for the operators and workers, all those types of aspects. This new role just shifts that focus to recognize that it's not only technologies of sustainability or technologies of the site management, but it can be other technologies that are totally seemingly unrelated that are now coming into play. Things like AI. It's a technology that's not directly viewed as being on a job site, but I guarantee you the job sites 5 years from now will all have AI layers helping to run them more efficiently, more productively, safer. We already are seeing that on the machines where we have people in object classification and recognition and avoidance systems. Those types of thinking will be spread out towards everything. So it's really expanding the focus to say, okay, it's not only technologies to run a site more efficiently and technologies to make your machines better. It's how do we operate an entire work site with multiple companies, multiple different technologies in a safer, more efficient, more productive, more cost-effective way.
As a whole, you've had a pretty storied career with Volvo, at a time during some pretty substantial changes in the industry. What would you say are some of the most exciting developments that you've either worked on or witnessed, whether it's within Volvo construction equipment or outside of it? And how would you say that they've helped to shape where the company is now and where the construction industry is currently?
I think it's an interesting question. Thank you for saying that, by the way. Um, but it's an interesting question about the evolution of the entire industry, and I think we're really seeing a transformation in our industry. Construction in general is a pretty conservative industry. So we hadn't, there'd been some innovation, there'd been a lot of advancements in machine design, in the way we did buildings, in the way we, in materials and things like that. But really, in the last 20 years, we've started to look at the a more holistic view of these job sites and these tasks that we're doing and how we can better contribute to societal well-being and customer well-being and operator well-being and all those things. So what I'm excited about is we're stepping back and not only looking at the machine and the machine components, but now looking at the human element of a building site. Because at the end of the day, the machines come and go. They're just machines. The people, that's what we need to protect and cherish and support.
So, what do you see as some of the most intriguing developments that are on the horizon? And how do you anticipate that those might be integrated into future construction equipment and job site applications?
So for a few years now, we've been talking about basically the convergence of three different technologies that are going to drive this forward. One is sustainable power or energy that we have, the work sites in general. I mean, we use a lot of energy, we use a lot of power to do the work that we do. We're moving, tons at a time that, takes a lot of force.
Right.
to do that. So we need a lot of energy. Traditionally, that's been coming from fossil fuels, but now we're seeing there's other sustainable technologies that we can bring into play on that. That doesn't mean everything's going to transform and shift over. There are applications that diesel is pretty well the only choice. And there are other applications where these new sources of energy are good solutions, and we should be pursuing them. The second set of technologies that we're looking really heavily at is the data management technologies, data transfer, and data handling technologies. So with the advent of data warehouses and AI, our ability to collect, sense, collect, manage, and analyze data has jumped by leaps and bounds exponentially from what it was a few years ago. So now when you think about it, if you take a car, every car has a temperature sensor on it. It tells you
Sure.
the outside temperature at any time of day. Every machine has the same thing. So we literally have millions and billions of temperature points. If we wanted to feed that into atmospheric models, that would be a tremendous source of data that we can use. And we're now getting to the point, before it was just overwhelming. You couldn't handle trillions and trillions of data points into a meteorological model and make any sense of it. Now we're getting to the point where you can start to play with that different data and make sense of it. Same thing with machines. So we can look at oil temperatures and predict failure analysis. We can look at, oil cleanliness. We can look at preventative maintenance steps. We can look at vibration, all those things on millions of machines around the world because of this data transfer and data collection ability that we have. And the third one is, of course, when you put an AI layer on that, that also allows more autonomous systems to come into play. And autonomy, a lot of people jump right away to operatorless machines, but there's various steps of autonomy that we're already taking that can help the operators be better, safer operators with the machines and get to the point. Eventually, there are some applications where we want to take the operator out. If it's dirty, dangerous, or very dull, repetitive work, yeah, we might want to remove the operator for his well-being and his protection. But our goal is not to remove all the operators. Our goal is to get as efficient as possible with the technologies we have available. What I like is that it's really the convergence of those three technologies. And that's something, excuse me, traditionally we've been looking at what can we do with the technologies we have available within Volvo or within CAT or Komatsu and everything, or whoever, and make a better machine. Now we're looking at what can we do in partnership with these other OEMs and other companies to bring in these core competencies and make the sites and our customer experiences better overall. So we recognize that we don't do 100% of the machines on any job site, neither does Caterpillar, neither does Komatsu, nor does anybody else. So we're going to have to eventually work together and figure out a way that we can talk to, machines can talk to each other, can coordinate, can synchronize their activities so that we eliminate the bottlenecks and the problems in the process flow, either through material or energy flow across the site. That'll make it more productive, more efficient, safer, uh, and more cost effective.
So, what do you think will be the biggest challenges that construction equipment OEMs like Volvo Construction Equipment may face in delivering the next iteration of solutions to end users? And what potential opportunities could they represent if they're able to be so successfully implemented?
I think the biggest challenge that the construction equipment industry is going to have is this figuring out how to work together, how to, keep the confidentiality and the trade secrets that we each all have and are necessary to run our businesses and be competitive, but yet work together for the common good and the common accomplishment of a more efficient site for the customer and more efficient site for society. I think that's the biggest challenge that we're going to have because it's a change in the way we're used to doing things. Our focus for 100 years has been, start with raw material and end up with a very efficient, productive machine at the end. But it's basically that machine part of it that we've been focused on and not the entire site. Now the focus changes from only looking at the machine to looking at, oh, how do all the machines work together? What do we do with all this data we're gathering? How can we make the sites more efficient, more productive, safer, all those things that I keep coming back to. But the point is that, we've got to change our focus, and that's going to be a challenge because it's a big cultural shift. It's much more comfortable for us. Our comfort zone is looking at machines. That's what we do
Sure.
day in, day out. It's a little bit uncomfortable when you have to look at, okay, we've got a competitor's machine feeding one of our machines. How do we make the two together be as efficient as possible? So to take that viewpoint and switch it in all our companies is going to be a bit of a challenge. The other challenge is that these technologies are so divergent from each other that no one company is going to own a core competency in all these technologies we're going to need.
Right.
We all have to work with partnerships and other companies that bring that core technology in or core competence in. So we have it on the machine side, but we can't necessarily build it on the telecommunication side, on the computing side, on the AI side, on other sustainable power sides, hydrogen fuel cells, all those things we're going to have to do in partnership with other companies. So both a challenge and an exciting opportunity are
For
represented
sure.
there.
Yeah, for sure. We've talked quite a bit about AI and digitalization and the role that it could potentially play going forward. Can you dive specifically into what you think its capabilities could be, say, within the next 3 to 5 years, and how that can help to maximize the efficiency on job sites? Um, and could it ultimately help advance adoption of more sustainable solutions in some way, shape, or form?
To answer your last question first, it
Okay.
definitely will help us get to the next stage. Um, the difficult or one of the challenges with AI is like any technology, there's a spectrum of different AIs we can talk about. So the deterministic AI is basically a rules-based, we tell it what it needs to do within these guidelines, and the machines will go out and do it very, very efficiently, very repetitively, the same way every time. You know what the outcome is going to be. The other end of that spectrum is where you have the probabilistic models of AI, where it looks at different use cases in the past and the history of doing this type of task, and it figures out its own best solution based on what it's learned about doing this similar task in the past. The problem with that is the result is not deterministic. You don't have a rule that says you will do it this way. The machine figures out how it's going to do it, and therefore the outcome may be a surprise in some cases. And that's where you get AI hallucinations come because of that. The third model is a hybrid of the two. So you take a rules-based program and put a probabilistic algorithm on top of it and make sure that you control that outcome within a set of guidelines or rules. So within those three, I think, again, if we're talking challenges, I think the challenge for us as an equipment industry, being a very conservative industry, is we tend to like the rules-based, very guideline oriented, very deterministic. If I tell a machine to do this, I want to know exactly what it's going to do, how it's going to do it, and when it's going to do it.
Sure.
That's going to be very hard for us to let go of. And it's a different risk profile when you do
Mm,
start letting go of that. So that I think is going to be the challenge. The problem is that the big gains are going to be when we can allow those probabilistic models to learn and get better. better solutions for us. When we allow that to happen, and keep an eye on it, of course, that's when the big gains in the industry will be seen. The gains in the rules-based model, we've already kind of defined the gain when we set up the rules. We
Sure.
said you have to do it in this way at this timing. Okay, it's going to do that, but it's not going to get any better. It's going to stay within that rule set. If you go to a probabilistic model, the machines can figure out ways to do it better with less energy, less cost, more material flow, whatever, much quicker than we could ever program into a rules-based. So a long-winded explanation to say, yes, I see a lot of potential. The challenge is going to be, do we allow it to learn and under close supervision, do we allow it to learn and get us to that next step of productivity, efficiency, cost, safety, all those things, using these probabilistic models or hybrid models to guide the AI.
Okay.
So that was a long-winded explanation to a simple question, but yes, I see great potential and I see the challenge.
So, where do you see not only Volvo, but the industry going from here? What do you envision the next 3, 5, maybe even 10 years to hold for the company and its products, and how does it reflect where you feel the industry may be heading next?
So I think there's going to be, first of all, much more integration. We've talked a lot about the integration on a site and a particular job site. That's kind of the near term horizon. But I think you'll see within the next 5 or 10 years, we'll start to not only integrate particular job site and that job, which may be a year, 2 years long in duration, but we'll start integrating that to an overall infrastructure plan from the government, say, a 5 year plan for road construction. There'll be AI elements there. They'll help plan out the projects. They'll help bring in the right contractors at the right time and start streamlining that whole process. So take it away from, 15 segmented agencies doing their own little bit and trying to coordinate over time to a more holistic, okay, we have a master plan, let AI figure out what's the best coordination and the best way to do it, and then we can put the resources to executing that plan, not resources to planning. So I see that as a big step forward. Again, the challenges are big, and the biggest challenge is not the technology, it's the culture and making sure that people are letting go within guidelines, but controlling the output of AI. I'm not a proponent of giving everything over to AI, but I think it's a phenomenal tool going forward. So
Right.
I think
So,
that's going to be industry wide that we're going
yeah,
to see that, and actually multiple industry wide, because when you take the different sustainable power solutions, okay, we're now working with power companies on how are we going to get charging power to these remote sites and recharge machines, in electrical case. Hydrogen production. It's a great solution, but you need to have hydrogen and it's got to come down significantly in cost to be viable. So how do we make that happen? And all those things are going to be happening at the same time. I don't think any one solution is going to win out, and you're going to have dominant solutions, but you're not going to have a single solution like we've had for the last 80, 90 years with basically fossil fuels. There's going to be different solutions come into play.
right. You mentioned the need for a cultural shift to make all this happen. How how would you encourage OEMs out there to move forward in that direction? Is there any secret sauce to help the industry get beyond some of the traditional thinking?
Uh, I think here the associations and government play a big part and are playing a big part. I see much more openness. It's turning away from an adversarial you can't do this or you must do this type of approach to, okay, how can we do this together? How can we get where we want to go? And much more realization that, we aren't enemies. We're all trying to get to the same thing. Nobody wants a less safe work site,
Right.
neither industry nor government. So, let's start with that we all want to get to the same goal. The differences that we have are how can we get there? What resources can we bring to the table that, are reasonable to get to that goal? But I see a much better participation between industry groups, government, the regulators, industry going forward, and companies amongst themselves. So it's a more cooperative environment than I've seen in my time in the career. Not to say that we didn't get along before, but we didn't really have the reasons to cooperate with each other the way we do now. If we want to take this thing to the next step, it's got to be through cooperation, through partnerships. Everybody recognized that. Now it's a matter of making it happen.
Right. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation, as it always is when we chat, Ray. But is there anything else that you'd like to just kind of finish off with at this point, or have we covered it all?
I I feel I've talked a little bit, probably too much about the challenges because that's what I'm involved in quite a bit, but I'm very optimistic about the future. I think these tools, the way they're developing are fantastic. I have faith that we can keep control of them. I'm not a, a proponent. I'm not scared of AI or these new technologies coming forward. I think they're going to benefit us in the long run. Not to say we don't have to be careful, we don't have to be responsible in the way we're using them. But I am very optimistic about where this is leading, how this is going forward, and what it will mean to society going forward. So I think it's an exciting time to be in the industry. It's an exciting time to be in the innovation business, because that's where these things are going to start. Good ideas and people working together across industries to make them real.
Excellent. Well, Ray, thank you so much for joining me. Again, this has been a great conversation, and I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us.
Thank you, Becky.